Hello, everyone. It's Mxiety. This is Safe Point, the talk show that is now sponsored by Betterhelp. But also, our goal here is to make sure that mental health conversations keep happening to break the stigma. Our goal is to make mental health information available to everyone. We do that through interviews with professionals, interviews with other mental health advocates, through open discussions, and through gaming when we talk about mental health. So thank you, everybody who's here. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with us. Thank you for being part of this community. I appreciate you. And welcome the one, the only Rogue from X-Men. No, Meg Kaylee. So hi, Meg.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
I am so stoked to have you on, and I feel like my brain's gonna like just explode from excitement.
Same. We're just gonna be a couple of exploding brains.
It's cool.
Here
It's
together.
cool. It's cool. It's cool. Captions are not moving. Okay, I am going to make sure that the captions work. So okay.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So first and foremost, I did want to talk about you are also a mental health advocate, which is how I started thinking that you're really super cool, because I generally am like, other cool mental health advocates are super cool. But before we kind of get into that, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and like your background and what you do now and all that good stuff.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Meg. Like Em mentioned, I'm really care a lot about mental health, and I think being able to use our platforms to talk about it is super important. But in terms of what I do, I started off as a streamer, and then that kind of helped me get my foot in the door for the gaming industry, which has been the industry I've always wanted to work in since I was a kid. It was kind of my dream was to get to work in video games, and primarily what I do now is on-camera hosting and screenwriting. And a little bit of production for a number of different companies. At the moment, I work freelance. I used to do GameStop TV every month, and now I do a segment for them called Nintendo News, where we talk about like Nintendo updates and stuff like that. And I do a couple of other things here and there, and I just really enjoy it because I love talking about video games. I love getting to meet people and pick their brains, and it's a lot of good fun.
And she was recently on a Logitech Super Bowl commercial, so that's pretty heckin'
That
fancy
was
pants.
weird and cool.
But yeah, what is that moment like, being like, I'm on it's a weird thing in general, I feel like, for streamers, because you literally get to say like, oh, I'm on TV all the time, like, technically, right? But
Yeah.
this is like a global, like, this is the biggest audience. How does that feel?
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool. My phone was blowing up of people who were like, "I saw you on there," and I even had a bunch of people from high school who I didn't even know that they remembered who the heck I was,
Right.
reaching out to me, going like, "Was that you I just saw on there?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and so that was kind of cool that I got to like reconnect with some people who I hadn't talked to in like years and years. But my family was there with me, and my mom set up like a little congratulations sign, and we were just like glued to the TV, like waiting
Aww.
for it to come on, and it was just really surreal because I never imagined that I'd get to do that and be in something like that. But I was just like, wow, it felt really good. I think it was validating to me in the sense of
Yeah.
like, hey, what I'm doing is like I'm working hard and it's paying off.
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah, it is. That's awesome. So we kind of talked about the fact we talked about the fact that we decided that we're going to talk about the fact that we're both kind of peeps who try to do everything and pushing yourself really hard to kind of to be your best. And so I have to ask, like, hosting, streaming, partnerships, like, there's not an easy answer to this, but like, how do you do it? How do you
I
take
don't
care of
really
yourself?
know. I
Okay.
wish I had some like secret formula where I could be like, oh, you just do this and that, and then you never get burned out and everything's fine. But honestly, it's still something that I'm journeying through myself. I get burnt out a lot, and I've kind of learned like if you ignore that, it doesn't go away. It just kind of
Mm.
gets worse and worse, and then you feel more burnt out to the point where you just don't want to like do anything, and then that's not really a good spot to be in. So I've kind of whether or not I've wanted to, been forced to realize that you have to try your best to have a balance of things and make sure that you take time for yourself. And also remember that it's okay to take time for yourself, because what I would do for a long time is I'd be like, all right, I'm taking time for myself. But then the whole time I'd be thinking about emails and thinking about
Oh
work I
yeah.
should be doing and guilt tripping myself and all of that. And then you're not really relaxing when you're doing that. So
No.
yeah, that's not a very relaxing spot to
No.
be in at
Or
all.
I'm just like, oh, I'll just I'll just answer these 3 emails because if I don't answer them, I'm going to be more stressed. So I'm just going to answer emails, and then
Yeah,
that's
and then you realize
working.
you're working. Yeah,
It's
exactly. And then
working.
you're like, wait a second, this was supposed to be time off. So I think it's a blessing and a curse to be your own boss and to work freelance because you have so much flexibility. I thrive in the middle of the night, and I am so grateful that I can just like write a script at 3 a.m. if that's when it's going to work best for me. And that's when I'm going to get my best writing done. But at the same time, you have to really learn to manage your own schedule and make sure that you're carving out time for you, because if you don't, it definitely takes its toll, I think, on any of us in the long run.
Yeah, yeah. So breaking things up into like smaller pieces and stuff like that. But like, so what? Yeah, no, I get. I was going to ask a follow-up question and it's gone. So I guess we're just. I guess that's that. But this is what happens. This is exactly what happens where you're doing so much and your brain is in so many directions that like
Mhm.
you're not like I'm here, I'm present. I'm very mindful during my interviews, but that doesn't mean that my brain isn't still going like a million miles an hour like, oh, I have to make sure I ask this and think about this and talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
that's where we are.
I love doing interviews myself. I think they're so fun and I love getting to pick people's brains, and I think everybody has such interesting stories to share, but at the same time, you have to kind of master the skill of being able to talk to somebody and be
Yes.
present in that moment, but
Right.
also what am I going to ask next? What are we going to talk about next? Where's this conversation going to go?
Yeah.
And so that it's a lot going on in your brain. So
It's a
kudos to you.
lot. Kudos to you. I know
Thank
I'm
you.
talking host to host here. It's not, yeah, it's not that wild. So, but yeah, so burnout and everything is super, super prevalent in our industry. And like, I don't know, like, what do we do to raise awareness of it? Because I feel like, I mean, obviously, I have a show. There's people watching. You're here. Like, you wanted to, you agreed to come on to the show. So there's all validity. There's validation to all of this, and that's amazing. But generally, when you start talking about mental health, people go like from attention from here to like, because they're like, I'm either uncomfortable, I don't know what to do. This is asking me to confront my feelings. I don't want to talk about my feelings. I don't want to talk about your feelings. So I guess like how do you approach it? How do you bring it into conversation, especially in an industry that like really really needs it?
Yeah. So I think that one of the things that's helped me the most with coping with burnout is absolutely talking with other streamers about it.
Mm,
A memory that I had shortly before everything kind of started with the pandemic was being at a dinner with a bunch of other streamers, and we just had this amazing conversation about burnout. And everybody there was kind of, we were all on the same page of like, yeah, I don't know how to do this anymore. I feel like we're all just exhausted. And that made me realize that it's such a prevalent problem in our industry. And I think that imposter syndrome kind of ties in. And I know it has for me in that, I'll stream for 4 hours, but I'll look at it and be like, that's not long enough.
no, it's
This other
not.
streamer did eight
Yep.
hours. And then that other streamer did a 24-hour stream. And I've never done a 24-hour stream. So
Hmm.
that means I'm not doing enough and I'm slacking.
Hmm.
And then you get into this mindset where you're like berating yourself and you're telling yourself you're not doing enough, when really everybody's kind of energy is going to be different when they're streaming. And
Of
there's no
course.
set rule of like, you have to do this, you have to do that. There's just no set formula. There's so many moving parts that go into it. And so basing your value off of it is never really the best thing, I think, because it can really just, all those things that are out of your hands can make you feel really bad about yourself when they're out of your hands. You can't
Yeah.
control those things. Um, but I guess I think just bringing it up with other streamers and also being really open about it with my community has been really helpful, because I found I've been met with such understanding when I was
Yes.
worried at first to be like,
Yeah.
I'm burned out, because I didn't want it to come across like, oh, I'm not having fun streaming, because that's not the
Right.
case.
Right. Or I'm
Having a passion.
ungrateful, or I don't appreciate the fact that you're here.
Exactly.
Yeah. All of those are like my worst fear.
Yeah, I didn't want it to come through that way, but just being open with it, everybody was really understanding. And so I've tried to be open about it on social media, open about it with my community on a more personal level and Discord and things like that. And if I feel burnt out, I just kind of say, hey, I'm feeling really burnt out. My mental health is, I'm having some trouble with it. So I'm taking some time to kind of focus on myself. And I've been fortunate that I'm kind of able to do that from the financial standpoint, because that's
Hmm.
obviously a big challenge that goes
Yeah.
into having balance.
Yeah.
But working freelance has really helped me to be able to kind of manage that a little bit better. So I do
Mm.
my freelance work. Sometimes I have some streaming times that I'm maybe not streaming as much. And that's kind of helped me a little bit. But it's really tough because, again, there's no like specific formula of what's A plus B equals no more burnout. I really
Right.
wish there was, because that would
Right.
be great and super useful.
Well,
But
because
those are kind of
if the answer is even just do less, then you're sitting there and you're feeling guilty or berating yourself for not doing enough. Like you're like, well, shouldn't I be doing more? And is this a sign that I'm like washed up in the industry or something? Like there's all these fears that come with not doing enough or taking time for yourself and all that. So, yeeps.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a big part of learning to be able to recharge has been really, really working on that. Positive affirmations. One thing that my therapist at one point recommended I do was take sticky notes that just said, like, you're doing enough and you're doing great, and just put them around like my workspace. And it's a cheesy little thing, but it's really helped me, because it's helped me learn to start saying those messages to myself. And now I kind of have this voice that speaks back to that mean voice that's like, you're not doing enough, where it goes, actually, Meg is doing enough. It's like this back and forth in my brain. And she's taking some time for herself. And that's just as important as anything else that she could be doing. And so, kind of learning to train that has really helped. And it starts with, I think, telling yourself messages that maybe you don't believe at first. But as
Yeah.
time goes on, you keep repeating those messages. And slowly you kind of go, well, maybe they're right.
Yeah. No, that's exactly. They start out like cheesy and corny, and you're like,
Of course. Don't worry
it's
about it. It
it's
happens.
amazing to interview another streamer because I know that you get it in a way that not everybody would. So thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
We're here. We're here on the same level when it comes to tech issues. Don't worry. They happen.
Oh my god, this is also I just rebuilt this computer. Okay. We're gonna have a conversation, computer, when we're done. All right. Okay. Oh, please make sure that Meg, are you hydrating? The
I'm
community is
hydrating, don't
very
worry.
worried about you. Okay. All right. I didn't
Thank
I
you for guys for your concern.
Thank you so much. I wanted to make sure that you knew that they were worried. If not, it's not a stream of that. It's not, but like you don't want your entire system to shut off. Okay. All right. So back. We're okay. I'm sorry.
You're fine. It's like, where do we even pick back up?
Anyway, so burnout, right? Okay, another thing I wanted to talk about is, and we're coming back and heavy kind of immediately. But the other thing I feel like you brought up body positivity, and I was like yes, and I feel like that is a huge thing that there's a lot of attention to women's bodies on just any content creation really, but on Twitch specifically too. So I just kind of wanted to talk about the topic of like body positivity and getting there and how to be body positive. I don't think I'll talk about it, but just in case, like trigger warning, I did have eating disorders growing up, so like having a weird relationship with your body is not something that's foreign to me, but it's something that was important to you, and I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm really, really glad that we're carving out some time to talk about this, because it's something that I'm really passionate about. And being happy in my own body is something that I've struggled with for most of my life. And I think something that really kind of forced me to face it was being very present on the internet and doing hosting work. You know, I would literally see Reddit threads about my body on when I was on GameStop TV, and people talking about me gaining weight and things like that. And it was very hard for me to deal with,
Yeah.
but I've kind of learned throughout all of it that it doesn't matter what these people think of my body. What matters is what I think of my body. And I've learned that my body's a good body. My body carried me through the I don't know, shitstorm that was 2020, and
That's
I'm still
right.
here standing because of my body. And so I've kind of learned to thank my body for the things that it has done for me. You know, my legs have walked me through some really hard moments. My eyes have cried when I needed to cry, things like that. And I've doing that kind of thing has really helped me to focus on the good that my body does rather than focusing on the things I don't like about it. And I've started to follow a lot of body positive content creators on TikTok and on Instagram and stuff. And that's really helped to kind of change my feed from more of comparing myself to more of, people, looking at people who are very happy in their skin and kind of learning from that and learning how they do that and how I can do that too. And it's been such a journey, and it definitely still is a journey. There's days where all of us are not going to feel very happy about our bodies, unfortunately, but you kind of learn to just get through those days and be happy to be you no matter what.
Absolutely, absolutely. And first of all, I'm sorry that people made fun of you. That's awful. But I think not, but about that separate thought. I think I think what you touched upon is super important. The fact that you took a moment and decided to listen to different creators and chose influencers that better reflected the mindset that you wanted to pursue, that was important to you. And I think
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah, I think social media can be a dangerous thing when it comes to how we perceive our bodies because, there's definitely certain poses, certain angles, certain lighting. There's literally apps that you can use to change the shape of your body.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you're following social media creators that are doing these things, well, I don't want to say, don't follow them. Um,
Right.
definitely can impact how you view yourself because you're comparing yourself to these bodies that maybe that's not even how their body actually looks.
Hmm.
So choosing to follow creators that are more diverse in body size, and also creators that even shine a spotlight. I follow a lot of creators that will do side by sides of like, here's me posed and here's how my body actually looks.
Yes,
um,
I love
I
those.
love that. Yeah, I
Yes.
love it because it
Yeah.
helps me think, oh, well, same here. Like, that's exactly what my body does when I pose and what it looks like when I don't pose. And it makes you kind of realize that there's this, I don't know, kind of, I don't want to say fake, but there's a bit of social media that is a facade. It's, you're not seeing exactly what the reality may be, and comparing yourself to something that may not be real
Yeah. Yeah.
is not a good thing to do.
Yeah. It's actually really interesting to me because the same people who are posting that are kind of like, we're still all participating in this culture, because it's not like, I don't exactly see content create, and this is not a diss in any sense. We're all just trying to swim to the best of our ability. But like,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna stop trying to pose and look my best because it's
Hmm.
so perpetuated. It's what needs to happen. But having those real moments and making sure that people are like made aware of the reality of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and all of that, like that is the element that makes it, that takes it apart. But that, I mean, I just find that we're trying to set a good example. Like we're trying to set a good example, but we fall into these traps anyway because it's just like, it's what it is. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that there's like really a comment on there. I think it's just I think it was just important to note.
Yeah, 100%. That is an important thing to note, and it definitely can be hard as someone who wants to be a body positive advocate to
Right.
feel like I want to put out a certain message, but at the same time I'm still doing these things. There are
Yeah.
definitely still
Yeah.
days where
Yeah.
like I'm comparing myself or I'm like not being nice to my body. So it's just a matter of recognizing that we're all human and we're all bound to do these things, and that it's okay. You're not going to feel great about yourself every day, and you shouldn't knock yourself for having a bad day. There's always tomorrow, and it's something that you're still working on. And the fact that you're working on it really, really does matter.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's, yeah. I mean, we still, regardless of whether you're comparing yourself to somebody, it's okay to want to look your best. It's okay, to use a filter because you have a pimple and you really want it. That's not what you want to show today. Like, that's okay.
Hmm.
There's a certain, I think, also, like you said, there's a certain grace, there's a certain forgiveness that we need to be sure to give ourselves as well. But you mentioned something really critical as well, which is comparison. You kind of brought it up a few times, comparing yourself to other people's bodies, comparing yourself to, am I doing enough? Am I streaming enough compared to somebody else? I feel like that is just like, if I could put a header on my problem with content creation, like my issue, my internal struggle with content creation, it's comparing myself. Like, that's the whole thing. Is And you never, because you can never measure up. Even when you look at somebody and you're like, well, I'm doing better than them, you're still not measuring up to them in some way, because you're like, well, am I doing better enough than them? Like, it's, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting kind of note that you just made there because it's true. And it's also important to recognize that I've talked to streamers of all different sizes and streamers who have all different kinds of accomplishments under their belt. And like, it seems like everybody I talk to about this is struggling with it. So that just kind of goes to show that no matter your level of success, you kind of get into this mindset of thinking, oh well, once I accomplish this I'll feel good, or once I do this I'll feel good, or once
Yes.
I hit this many followers. But the reality isn't that. The reality is once you reach that thing, then you're going to say, oh well, why have I not done this yet? And it can be very easy to always focus on what's next, what's next, what's next, and you forget to kind of stop and look back and say, well, here are these things I've done that were really great, that I worked really hard for. I did a really good job on these things. And so I've kind of learned to start doing that. I actually started a list of things that I have done that I'm proud of. And whenever I find
Yes.
myself comparing, or whenever I find myself feeling like down on myself or like I'm not doing enough, I sit down and I read the list and I say, well, look at all these things you've done, Meg. You've done these things and you feel proud about them when you talk about them.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important note too, kind of going, I guess, off topic a little bit, but it's okay to feel proud of the things you've done. I used to always be so nervous about ever like talking about my accomplishments or feeling proud because I would go, oh, I don't want to be bragging, or like, oh, I want to be humble. You can be humble and you can still be proud as heck
Yes.
because you're a
Yes.
badass,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. And nobody is going to do that for you. Like if you don't, there's not going to be somebody, I mean, yes, it's very kind as content creators. Sometimes people will come in and be like, you did this thing and I'm so proud of you and I'm so grateful to be in your community. That's amazing. And I don't want to discount that. But it doesn't hit the same way as you being able to say that to yourself, and you being able to proudly say, I accomplished X thing, is works in two ways. One, it affirms to you that I am deserving of the praise that I gave because I just said it out loud. And two, it reaffirms the cycle of like, I did something good and I should do something good again, and I will do something good again for myself. And but it's so it's tough. It's tough. That's one that I struggle with a lot. But I literally did the same thing that you're describing last week. I was feeling like crap, even though I knew like I was accomplishing stuff and getting somewhere. But and I literally had to sit down and make a list of like I literally did what you're describing, because I don't think there's another way. Like I don't have another piece of advice about that. There's no way around it. You just have to reflect on yourself and be like, no, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it too for me has come from not just seeking validation from other people, which is something that I can admit that I
Yes.
did for a lot of my life, especially
Yeah.
as a teenager.
Same.
I never stopped to seek validation from me and think, well, what am I thinking about myself? And forcing myself to do that rather than just doing what I felt was easy at the time, which was leaning on other people constantly for
Yeah.
validation and praise.
Yeah.
It really helped me realize that I wasn't doing that enough for myself. And it kind of helped me push myself to a place where I was learning how I could be better to myself and how I could be my own hype person. Because you tend to find a lot more confidence, and it kind of goes back to a lot of the different things we were talking about with body positivity,
Yeah.
with content creation, anything that you don't feel great about. It might be good to stop and think, well, am I treating myself good with these things? Am I being nice to myself? Am I giving myself praise? And if you're not, then maybe it might be good to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly. If you find yourself comparing yourself to other people, sitting back and saying, okay, well, it's a great moment to self-reflect and being like, why am I comparing myself to other people? Like, what has spurred this? Usually it's something that we're extremely self-conscious about, right? So, and then can I do something about what I'm self-conscious about? Can I fix it? If I can't fix it, then what can I do to make peace with it? Or, yeah, and everything you said as well. That's wonderful. So I wanted to move into the little bit of a heavier topic and offer everybody a disclaimer. We are going to talk about suicide. Nobody's giving any detail or anything like that, of course, but the topic of suicide is going to be discussed. But so I wanted to talk about what got you into mental health advocacy, why you have these discussions, why you're open about what you're doing, like what got you here.
Yeah, so it's something that it's definitely hard to talk about, but it's something that I feel comfortable talking about because it's, I've realized the importance of talking about it. And something that really changed my mindset on mental health was losing my cousin Sam to suicide about 2 years ago. And It really just kind of opened my eyes to how important it is to have these conversations, because a lot of us were very shocked. I was very shocked and I had no idea. We would talk occasionally, we would message each other. We didn't live near each other, but we would talk since I was a kid. And, I just was very shocked to know that she was struggling in this way. And, it can be hard to look back because it's easy for us to kind of think, well, could I have done differently that maybe would have
Right.
changed the outcome?
Right.
So I stopped doing that, and I kind of looked back and said, what could I do going forward that would make her proud, or to help other people who might be in the same position that she was in? So I've started volunteering for Crisis Text Line, which I'm still in training, but even just the training has helped me learn a lot of amazing communication tools for how I can help other people who may be in a tough spot. I've learned a lot about different resources that exist for people who are struggling, and I've had conversations about it on social media and on my stream and things like that. I myself have also struggled with a suicide attempt when I was a teenager, which, was definitely very hard for me to go through. But just realizing how persistent this issue is, and how it affects so many people in some way, it's made me realize how important it is for me to talk about it, because I am lucky to be in a position where I can hopefully get out there to somebody who might be having a hard time, and I can remind them that there are resources, remind them that there's still hope, and still a reason to keep on going forward. So being able to recognize that has really fueled my passion for mental health advocacy.
So the first thing I wanted to say is thank you so much for sharing that. That is I know you talk about it. I know we all talk about it and we try to be open about it and everything, but it doesn't get easier to talk about. It's kind of like trauma where like over time you just learn, but it doesn't necessarily get easier. Like
Yeah.
it gets it just gets less heavy maybe. I don't know if that makes sense.
No,
Yeah.
I think it does. It's because it's a conversation that I feel like we've all been kind of raised by society to feel uncomfortable about.
Right.
When it's not something we should feel uncomfortable about, because it's an issue that impacts like everybody in some way. Even if you happen to be in a position where maybe you're not struggling yourself, it's very likely you have someone in your life who is, that you can
Yeah.
maybe help in some way. And so I really think that it's so important for us to chip away at that discomfort. It's, as much as it kind of feels weird at first to talk about some of these things, it definitely becomes, for me anyway, has become more comfortable with time, and the more conversations I've had, to chip away at it, and feel more comfortable discussing these things.
Well, thank you so much for opening up and sharing that. I really do appreciate that.
Of course.
It's one of those very strange things where, and I don't know if you have this phenomena where the more you talk about it, the more you feel like, oh, people must be talking about this, like this must be normal. And then once in a while I just like get slapped in the face um with like this realization that like people aren't still ready for these conversations. Like, for example, the article that just came out in New York, Washington Post, in one of the bigger newspapers about OCD, where people were like, "This is what it's like to live with OCD," and everybody's like, "What?" And yeah, like mental health conditions have existed this whole time, and I like on one hand, I totally understand why they're uncomfortable. They force people to confront their feelings and have these discussions. But on the other hand, like it's just a kind of health, right? Like if I can know about
Exactly.
your aunt's or uncle's, heart condition, or about your friend's diabetes, or a broken leg, or whatever it might be, why can't somebody talk about their OCD? Why can't somebody talk about the fact that they had a suicide attempt? Like that is all, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's so frustrating to me that there's still so much work to be done. Because I see it as, physical health and mental health should be treated similarly.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't have the same treatments,
Right,
but
right,
they
right.
should be looked at in the sense that people take physical, like if you tell someone, oh, I have a heart attack or something like that, they
Yeah,
take it very seriously.
yeah,
But if you're like, I'm struggling with suicidal thoughts, then people go, oh, well, why don't you just stop thinking like that? You have so many things to be grateful for. And it's like,
yeah,
no, that's a mental health condition that may require physical mental physical that professional is the word I'm looking for, professional intervention.
yeah,
um and so that's, it just really gets my blood boiling when
yeah.
people don't And I know it's not entirely them to blame because a lot of it is society and kind of they're just parroting what they've learned from society, but at the same time it feels very not empathetic when people say things like that because it's just, I think that kind of undoes a lot of the work that we're trying to do.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And I how have you had conversations with people and have you been able to like teach them empathy? Because I go back and forth about with this a lot. Like on one hand I'm like, okay, people can learn and they just don't get it. And then on the other hand, I'm like, if you haven't lived through it, I don't know that you will ever get it. Like what's your experience been with that?
It's really frustrating because I think that there's kind of a balance to be found here
Sure.
because I used to be of the mindset where I'm like, I have to help everybody. If somebody doesn't look at things the right way, it's my responsibility to change them. And then I
Mm.
kind of realized, no, it's not, Meg,
Yeah.
because if you try to do that, you're going to drain yourself. And some people don't want to change.
Right.
It has to be somebody who is willing to open up their eyes and maybe change the way that they're thinking. And if you're going to do something to a point where it completely drains you, that's not good. I think you have to be very cognizant of how do you feel about the situation? How is it impacting you? Is it something that's hurting you? Because if it is, then maybe it's better to let go and realize that it's not your job or responsibility to change every single person you meet. But with that said, if there is someone, I what comes to mind is kind of like trolls on the internet because I find that a lot of times if I
Mm.
respond to a troll,
Mhm.
especially if I'm just like, well, here's why this is wrong, and I hope that you have a good day.
Mhm.
Something like that will be maybe my typical response. A lot of times they will respond back and say, hey, I'm really sorry that I said this. I
Yeah.
didn't think about it, and I'll be more mindful of my actions going forward. And that feels really good to feel like you're able to maybe help somebody realize that they shouldn't go around being hurtful to other people. And maybe you just protected someone else from being hurt in the future. But if I do see something where I'm like, I don't even want to engage with this because it's going to drain me and it's this is hurtful and it's going to hurt me to even talk with this person, then I just leave it because at that point it's not my responsibility to be putting myself in harm's way for someone else's sake when I don't even know them.
Right. No, it's how do you, I guess, not that I'm asking you like tell us about your crisis response training, but like how what have you learned in terms of like just general broader lessons about mental health that you can take away from, I guess, just your, it might be your experience as well, it can be from your training, it can be like just kind of how do you what does mental health, mean to you now and what lessons have you taken away?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, um, something that I've kind of learned through the training and also through just my own experience is that a lot of times people really just want to be listened to.
Yeah.
I tend to be a problem solver. My brain immediately wants to find a solution when I see a problem. And sometimes somebody just wants to rant, somebody just wants to get something off
Yeah.
their chest. It's
Mm.
not always like, oh, well, here's what you could do to fix this. Sometimes that's not what somebody is looking for. Or even like if someone's going through something really hard and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that. Maybe they feel like they don't want to be pitied. Maybe they just want you to affirm what they're feeling and say something like, well, it's understandable that you'd feel this way in that situation. Then they might be like, huh, well, maybe it is okay that I feel angry about this or that I feel
Right.
sad about this.
Right.
So I've learned to just listen more and affirm actions more and also not to, or I guess be mindful of when I'm comparing it to my own situations. I used to do that a lot because I wanted somebody to feel like, well, I understand what you're going through. I went through something similar and I know how hard it is and I know how hard it must be for
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
But sometimes it could come across to them like you're just talking about yourself.
Right.
So I've kind
Right.
of learned when it's a right time to do that as opposed to just listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find it gets like over time it gets easier to kind of stop putting in your 2 cents? I think that's the thing I have the hardest time with as well.
Yeah, I think especially when it's a really emotional conversation, it can be really easy to you want to appeal to that emotion by being able to relate. Um so yeah, it's something I'm still working on honestly because it can be hard to know exactly when it's the right moment to talk about your own experience because you don't want to change the conversation to you. But at the same time, you kind of want this person to not feel like all the I don't know, whatever you're telling them is not all bullshit, because it
Right.
helps for them to be able to see, well, they've been in this position and they got through it. So usually I think that by like you have a back and forth with someone, if you open with, oh well, here's what I went through, then it almost comes across like you're trying to talk about yourself, or it can come across that way.
Right.
It's something that I've learned, that if I'm going to bring up something about me, maybe I talk about it later in the conversation rather than towards the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. That's great, 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 great advice. Fam, this is a great time to ask your question. Exclamation question will give you all the instructions on how to do so. Um, Long Jane Silver has asked a question, and I want to make sure that we address it. Hold on. Oh, wait, did it not register? Oh, gosh darn. Okay. I hope the scrolling up will work. Thank you so much for the raid, by the way, everybody. This is oh no, Long Jane Silver. If you could re-ask your question, that would be fantastic. It looks like it got eaten up by the break, by our intermission. So how do you decompress when you're talking to people? So these are heavy topics. Even if we are like super aware and also like generally pro mental health discussions and all that, these are super heavy things to do. So how do you set that boundary? Actually also set that boundary with your community, being like, hey, this is the line. You can't come to me with your mental health problems all the time. And so, yes, I know that's very general, but let's go.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really important note, and something that I've worked on with my wonderful moderators, because it can be really hard, especially if you have the same person continuously kind of coming to you with, their mental health problems. And we've learned that we don't want to be obviously responsible for all of somebody's mental health problems, because we're
Right.
not professionals,
Right.
and so usually I think what we've been able to do that maybe is the most useful for them is let them know about maybe some resources they didn't know about, stuff like crisis text line, or like
Right.
suicide hotlines, and those kinds of resources that do exist. There's many of them out there that are really, really just helpful and useful, because I think a lot of people think, well, oh, if I want to get therapy, it costs like $1 billion. And yes, this is a whole nother animal to
Oh
tackle.
my
I
God.
wish,
Access to care in the US.
yes,
Fudge.
I wish that it was free and really easily accessible. But even if it's not, there are a lot of options that you can pursue, that maybe can help you a lot. So I've learned to kind of point people to those kinds of resources.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's the bottom line. The hardest part I've had with that is learning how to differentiate, like not sounding like, oh, your problem's really difficult, I can't deal with it, here's somebody who can,
Yeah.
Because I remember feeling that when people would just send me a resource. But the recognition, there needs to be recognition there, at least in my opinion, in my experience, in the conversations we have with my mods. There needs to be recognition that like it's not the time and place, unfortunately. Like if I can give you resources, but right now there's also 100 people watching, and they're depending on me for entertainment and kindness and all those wonderful things. And this is not the best place for you to get the help that you need. And at the end, like I used a metaphor before, which is like, it's like coming into Best Buy and being like, hey, can I have some milk? And like, your intentions are good, and I understand you need milk, and I want to get you that milk, but this is just not the best place. Like, I want you here, but and you matter, and you're important, and your needs are important, but I can't give you milk. Like, I can't sell you milk. I don't have milk for you here. You have to go.
I love that.
Yeah. It works, and I've tried to word it in a tweet, and somebody was like, that sounds very callous, and I was like, no, I swear. But if you say it out loud, it sounds a lot better than if you write it down.
Yeah, it does.
Well, yeah, it's somebody called it, I don't know if No Words is here, but he's called it the Mxiety milk metaphor. So if you decide to use it, it's not trademarked. You're fine.
Awesome. I definitely might mental note that one.
So Long Jane Silver asks, how would you approach the mentality around you're not healthy? Like when people try to claim that let's go! Body positivity is promoting an unhealthy lifestyle. Like, how do we change people's thinking around that and make them understand that even quote, unhealthy people are still worthy of love and respect? I hope I worded that correctly. That's a great
Oh my,
question.
yes, great question. Also great like note there at the end too. My reaction there was because it frustrates me so much when people respond that, because they are not saying that about anything else. I mean, well, maybe some of them are, but I feel like these people who act like they are so like concerned about your health, um
Bullshit. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
like no, it is bullshit. It really is bullshit.
Yeah. Why? You don't know me. You don't care about you don't care about my health. Like, come on.
Exactly. It's like you're not asking about, like, the same people are not asking like your kind people in chat are if you're hydrated or
Right.
if you are
Right.
I don't know, taking your vitamins. Like they
Right.
it's they only suddenly act really concerned when weight is the conversation topic.
Right.
And I totally get how frustrating it can be to converse with these people or to have to deal with them, because it makes you feel crappy. And I kind of, what I've started to say is just like, well, I didn't hire you to be my,
My
personal
coach.
trainer or
Yeah. So
my
you're
health
good.
coach.
I free
That's
you from
usually what
this
I will
burden.
say. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you're not my health coach. Uh, my health is fine. I work with people who actually have done the training and have, have PhDs and stuff in these things. Um, and yeah, it really frustrates me because you can be extremely healthy and you can still have a larger body.
Yeah.
Um, you can be on the other side, you can be extremely unhealthy and have a
Yep.
very thin body, but those people are not constantly being asked, oh well, well, what is your health problem, or like what's wrong with your health.
Right.
You really,
Right.
I'm just concerned about your health. um so I'm trying to think, I guess, what the best way to deal with it is. Usually just telling them that I didn't look for their health advice. They're not trained in these things. There is a note that I saw recently, I think it was in a tweet, and it was basically about how if we all ate the exact same thing and had the exact same lifestyle and exact same diet, our bodies would all look different.
We would still. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I
I love
love
that
that.
so much when I saw it, because, and I can't take credit for it. It was in a tweet or something. But I loved it because it's so accurate. Um, Everybody's bodies are different in some way, and it's not anybody else's business to be concerned about exactly what's going on with yours.
Yeah.
And so I'll usually say that too. Like, it's not your concern to be worried about my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
It's similar when I've had people tell me that I don't have depression, and I snap back, especially if it's like just some rando on the internet. Like I will just straight up be like, "Thank you. I know I talked to like 7 doctors for the past 9 years, but you Mr. Twitter
You're a
PhD,
genius. Yeah, I usually
you
like to be a little sarcastic.
yeah, yeah, you figured it out. You figured it. I've been faking it this whole time. Like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'm just faking mental illness. Wow.
Wow.
What a way to waste my life.
It just disappeared. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
enlightening me.
Yeah. Not to change the subject. Body
Yeah.
positivity is super important as well, but that's just how I relate to it. But yeah, no, and I always quote this. I'm like, yeah, I ran a 10K in Disney World when I was like my quote heaviest, and like I had concerned family asking me about like, oh, are you are you okay? Like, are you? But then I lost so much weight because of mental health medication that I went on, and and I felt miserable, and people like, you look amazing. I'm like, why aren't you asking me now if I'm healthy? Why aren't
That's
you
the other
asking? Because
thing
I'm
too
not.
that,
Sorry.
yeah, that really gets me is the whole like how you lose weight and then people say you look amazing.
Yes.
That is because that tells you, oh well, I look better when I'm thin.
Yes, and that's
Um
a message you internalize. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's all of these kinds of messages. And I was recently thinking about like a lot of those before and after photos that you see where people post like a before and after of when they lost weight.
Right.
And on one hand, like I absolutely want to support and commend hard work and them working towards, especially if it is health related and they're working towards being healthier. 100%, I think that's great. But at the same time, it's challenging for me because a lot of these kinds of posts will put value on, oh well, the before is bad, the after is good, and now because I'm skinnier I am better, which is
Right.
not true.
Right.
You're still a very valuable human regardless of your size. So
I love
Yeah.
that. Thank you so much for saying that. That's critical. And Tardy Microbassa, follow-up question. And don't forget an exclamation question if you'd like to ask a question. We have a few minutes for a few more. But Tardy Microbass, if you have one tip for people dealing with, they're saying body positivity, but I'm assuming like body issues, what would it be?
Yeah, I think just I'm trying to think what my like top tip would be. For me, what's been really helpful is again surrounding myself with body positive people. Um, if you're hanging out with people who are constantly talking about wanting to lose weight or constantly like berating what you're eating or saying, "Oh, you're gonna eat that," like little comments. They may seem small, but those kinds of things really do fuel, I think, your perception of yourself. They definitely did for me. Um, Another thing that I would say, and this has been a big one for me, I used to always feel terrible, pardon me, if I would have like old clothes that used to fit and now they don't fit. Or if I order
Yeah,
what is my usual size from a clothing company and then I try it on and it doesn't fit.
right.
I would think, oh my God, I gained so much weight and now these pants I bought don't fit. My size must have changed. No. The oh my God, I could go on a
No,
whole rant about the
go, no, go
sizing.
on this, because why is sizing not, why is it not the same? Men,
It's not
men's clothing
universal.
is
You
not
can
like
get a
this.
large. Exactly. It's not like this for men's clothing, and you can get a size large from 5 different stores. And I can almost guarantee you, I would be willing to like put money on it that all of those are going to fit very differently.
Yeah,
Um, because it just ranges so much. And so, if something that you like doesn't fit, don't blame you. It's not, there's nothing wrong with your body. The problem is the clothes.
yeah.
And that's okay. You can return it. Now you get your money back anyway. And you can go find something that does fit you, that makes you feel great, and makes you feel happy when you try it on. So that would probably be another tip is don't blame your body, blame the clothes.
I love
The
that.
clothes are it's the clothes because that just really just gets me my blood boiling because I know for me it's really like made me feel bad about my body in the past. Um, and so it's that can just be extremely frustrating. And I guess also just remembering the good that your body has done for you. That's been a big one for me recently is thinking about the different parts of my body and the things that they have done for me. And like looking at again just the past year, probably any of you can relate to the past year, how rough it's been
Yeah, oh
on
my
all of us in a lot of
God.
ways, and think about how your body has got you through that, and here you are
Oh,
today. That's an amazing thing, and being thankful to my body for carrying me through that has really helped me feel better.
oh, I love that. Yeah, I was driving the other day and it was a poster that was like, "Are you ready to lose that pandemic weight?" And it was a picture of somebody clearly overweight, like trying to, like
Oh,
button their pants. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Who is this for? Who is this helping? This is just make everything." And Jeff Vader is bringing it up in chat too. Everything around us is meant to make us feel like crap and thus take action for that. And that is awful. That is terrible. That's it.
yeah, it's so frustrating. Marketing and society have really perpetuated this issue so much, and that's why it's been so key for me to really be mindful of who I'm following on social media and the kinds of things that they're posting. Because now it's like I went from feeling like Instagram was a place where I constantly would feel crappy and like be comparing myself to
Yeah.
people, to now I follow so many body positive accounts that it really gives me a boost when I go on there, because I could be having a really crappy day where I feel terrible about my body, but then I go and I see something beautiful written out about how it's okay to have days where you feel bad and it's your body's beautiful, and just reading stuff like that really helps me a lot.
Aw, I love that. It goes back to it. Like, I know people hate the word influencers, but people are influencing you. What they post, what they talk about, all of that influences you. It influences your mood and how you feel. So curate that. Curate that to what you want it to be. Yeah. Yeah, no, it is a great, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Laz, love you. But this has been amazing. This has been I just like absolutely adore you. Again, I'm sorry for the tech issues,
Thank
but I
you.
appreciate all
No
of your
worries. You
patience.
too. This is it flew by just getting
It
to chat with you
it
about these
does.
things.
It does. And it's really it's really fantastic to have this opportunity. So I want everybody to know, like, where can they hear about you? Where can they find you again? Where, where can they continue these amazing conversations with you?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. You are wonderful. I really
Oh,
appreciate all of the work that you do for mental health. If anybody wants to keep up with me, you can find me at twitch.tv/Meg Kaylee. And then on Twitter and Instagram, I'm Meg_Kaylee. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah, here's the link. I'm like, this is my cue. I've been posting the links throughout the episode, but here's all the links.
Thank you.
Please check out Meg on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and obviously Twitch. She's absolutely fantastic and a joy to be around. And I'm so stoked that we got to meet, and I hope, to continue fighting the good fight together.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. We are going to be right back, so please stick around. Thank you. I'm gonna press buttons, and I'm gonna do it wrong, but I got for sticking around. Thanks to viewers like you, we are now sponsored by Betterhelp. What is Betterhelp? It is the world's largest online counseling platform, and you can get 20% off if you use my link either in chat or checking out all of the links and stuff below my screen right now. I hope that you'll consider checking it out. It is a wonderful platform. With just a few clicks, you can get to the resources that you need. I always talk about the fact that everybody should have a ton of mental health resources at their disposal. Well, this is another one. Of course, it is not for everyone. If you are not feeling so good that you feel like you are going to harm yourself, it's definitely not the best place to go in that kind of emergency. But otherwise, if you're considering talking to a therapist, if you've never had therapy before, if you're ready to open up, it might be a great place to start. With just a few clicks, they partner you up with a counselor, and if that counselor doesn't work, you can always try another one. You can just let them know, and they will do everything they can to make sure that you have an awesome experience. So I really hope that this helps, and thank you so much for sticking around. Back to the show.